Good evening, listeners. It's time to settle in for another chilling story of suburban suspense. From the slumbering heads of Mount Rushmore to the twin and windy cities. From the unseen depths of the Great Lakes to the rustling husks of cornfields across the heartland. Who knows what ghouls and crawling creatures lurk among us under the Midwest moon?
Voices from the Other Room. As a child, Marnie couldn't sleep unless the dishwasher was churning. She did okay playing on her own, so long as she could hear her family making dinner or her dad's records in the den, Joni Mitchell's voice streaming in from down the hall. As she got older, Marnie never drove at night without podcasters as companions, and beelined to the TV at hotels, quick to cue up something funny and familiar before the bed was ever turned down. Noises and voices to keep her quiet company. After college, Marnie discovered a whole genre of music made to sound muffled and distant, as if it were playing from another room. A lot of the songs were layered with crowd noise and people talking. To Marnie, the chatter was strangely comforting. It gave the illusion of family and friends filling her empty apartment, just out of sight. One night, new neighbors next door woke Marnie from a dead sleep. Panic shot through her as she scrambled to get her bearings. In the dark, through the wall, Marnie heard loud hammering, like a meat tenderizer coming down repeatedly against a counter, and a pair of voices shouting over each other. Marnie had taken her last neighbors for granted, with their quiet comings and goings. She may as well have been sharing a wall with ghosts for how little she heard or saw them. But hours passed now before she was able to fall asleep. The next night, the noise was worse. Louder and more persistent. She turned on white noise, forcing her headphones so deep that her ears ached. On the third straight night of getting jolted awake, Marnie knocked on the wall above her bed, harder than she meant to in her sleep-deprived anger. No sooner had she knocked than a growl rippled through the room, an inhuman snarl so close it sounded as though it came from beside her. She drew her hand back, startled. After a moment of total silence, the banging and voices ramped up again. Marnie grabbed her pillow and retreated to the couch for the night, adrenaline coursing through her tired body. She reported the noise to the property manager, who told her she needed proof. When Marnie failed several times to capture the noise with her phone, zombie walking from bed to hold its tiny speaker against the wall, her dad sent her an old tape recorder in a vinyl case. Stuck to it was a post-it that said, "Low-Tech Rules." Marnie pulled the recorder from its case and inserted a new tape before setting it on her bedside table. Late that night, like a punctual, unwanted guest, the noise returned. Bleary-eyed, she rolled to the tape recorder and pressed record, then set it beside the wall. She let it run, a second set of ears to hear the banging and shouts bleeding through the wall. She drifted in and out of sleep for a time, before remembering the tape recorder and turning it off. The next morning, Marnie rewound the tape and played it back, praying she'd captured the racket. The roughhousing and loud voices were there, but the recorder picked up something more. First, she heard only the whirring wheels of the recorder, both in real time and the sound captured on tape as it recorded. The sound was unnatural, like a robot recording its own heartbeat. Marnie nudged the volume wheel louder, straining to hear beyond the mechanic whir. Suddenly, a laugh, and a second, deeper laugh in response, then muffled conversation, like 2 or 3 people were conspiring. It sounded to Marnie like they were whispering about her, aware they were being recorded. The laughter and low talking weren't at all what she remembered recording in her frustrated sleeplessness. Just then, Joni Mitchell, faint but clear from the little recorder, familiar lyrics and muted as though playing from the end of a long hallway. Marnie jabbed the stop button on the recorder and slid it into her bedside table drawer, too spooked to even look at it. Fighting off a full-fledged panic attack, Marnie got ready for the day and took off to work. All day she tried to distract herself, but no music or small talk with coworkers could trick her nervous system into forgetting. The thought of more sleepless nights and the recorder with its impossible recording unnerved Marnie. So much so that when she got home that night, she decided to walk a lap around the massive complex to clear her head. The heat of the day had faded and her skin felt cool in the evening air, like a breeze was blowing in from another room. When Marnie reached the end of her loop and came even with her neighbor's glass door, something stopped her cold. It was the sound of a dinner party spilling outside. Conversation and laughter over clattering dishes. There were no ghoulish faces or scary, watching figures as her fear had conjured up. In fact, she couldn't see anyone because of how the window shades were angled. The sightless sounds jangled Marnie in a way she couldn't explain, though, and she continued on to her own apartment. Marnie heaved a sigh to finally be fitting her key in the door, but the relief was short-lived. When she pushed inside, it wasn't quiet darkness that greeted her, but a warm glow spilling from her bedroom, and the sound of the table being set in the kitchen. Above a murmur of voices in the other room, someone called Marnie to dinner.